Good morning. Today is the 10th of Iyar, the 10th day of Iyar, and it's also May 1st. We're going to be looking at the second reading of this week's Parshat Emor. And the second reading starts out with what really causes the book of Leviticus to be named after the way it is. Leviticus literally means the book of Levites. And really, the name in Hebrew that this term borrows from is what we call not the Leviticus, but Torah Kohanim, the Torah of the priests, meaning the teachings of the priests. And the Torah here, in this third book of the Pentateuch, is talking about all the laws regarding the priesthood. It's also related to the Levites in some ways, because the priests were Levites, but it's mostly about the priests. And the second reading is really zooming in on laws of priests. And it says like this: there are many priests that cannot serve in the temple because they are disqualified. And why are they disqualified? There's two main reasons. The one reason is because they're not ritually pure. That's the second part of our reading today. The different types of ritual impurity that make it impossible for a priest to be able to serve in the temple until he purifies himself. But the first part of today's reading is disqualification because of blemishes, or what we would call, there's no better word than the word we use today, handicaps. They are simply handicapped. And on the face of this is going to sound very, very troubling. Let's read it. God spoke to Moses, saying, "Speak to Aaron, saying, any man among your descendants throughout their generations who has a bodily defect may not approach the altar to offer up his or God's food, so to speak. For it is not proper that any man who has such a defect should approach the altar." So what kind of defects are these? A blind man, a lame man, a man whose nose is sunken between his eyes, a man with mismatched limbs, meaning one limb is bigger than the other, could be his eye, one eye is bigger than the other eye, or one leg is longer and the other is shorter. A man who has a broken leg or arm, a man whose eyebrows are so long that they extend over his eyes, a man with a cataract, a man with a commingling of colors in his eye, meaning that he doesn't just have the one color, he has two colors in his pupil, not the pupil, but around the pupil. A man with dry boils, a man with oozing boils, or a man with crushed testicles. All these are, there's no other way to say it, these are handicaps. A person who is lame, meaning he simply can't walk, he needs to use some kind of aid, some kind of walking aid, be it crutches or be it something else. This is very troubling. Why would the Torah disqualify? Why would God disqualify people on the basis of handicaps? There's nothing wrong with them. Apparently they're pure in terms of ritually pure, and their mind is fine. So why can someone with these blemishes serve as a priest in the temple? And again, for the modern ear, this sounds very troubling. It's like, why is the Torah discriminating in this way? The answer seems to be that this is the same thing as being impure. What's the idea here? It would seem to us that things that are godly should be inclusive. They should include everything. But the truth of the matter is that when something is truly representative of godliness, it's not inclusive. It actually should be the way we expect godliness to be, which is close to perfect. It should show some kind of perfection in the way that the service is conducted and in the type of people that are conducting it. We take the very best. And even though everywhere else we certainly have no reason not to include others, or include people who have a handicap or some other blemish. When it comes to the king, let's call it, and we'll see this in a moment, or where we are showcasing exactly what this all stands for, what Torah stands for, what God, where God is, and so on, it has to be perfect. Now, this is a natural sentiment that people have, because when you go to the White House, you expect everything to be clean. You don't expect things to be dirty. Now, if someone would come and say, okay, in the White House, we need to show that we're inclusive of everyone. Okay, so on what basis? On the basis of color, skin color, on the basis of ability. So skin color obviously wouldn't matter at all. Ability, a little bit already of a question. Can we also include people that can't do the job that they need to do? So I don't think that would fly over too well, and we would be understanding that it has to be people who really know what they're doing that are working there. But what is a little bit hard to understand is, why would we want everyone there to be healthy and perfect physically? And that's what the Torah is saying here. An answer that's given in Chassidus is that this goes even beyond the need of our own need to see things working well in the place that is most representative of God. It's beyond even our own sentiment that we would like things to be perfect. And actually, Chassidus describes this in terms of King David. And King David, when he grew older, it was probably around his early 60s, he grew tired of being the king. He couldn't function anymore as the king. He was, in a sense, not just fatigued because of the hard work, he was also tired because he felt that his efforts were in vain, that he had not been able to do his main bidding. When he came to become the king of Israel, his main statement was, I'm going to build the temple. And God prevented him from doing that. So in a sense, he was in despair. He was frustrated with what running the kingdom meant, even though it was very important, and what he had done was considerably looked upon as a great feat, because he had been able to bring the 12 tribes together under a single rule, and he had brought everyone together under his sovereignty in Jerusalem, which was something that was missing until that time. But he was not able to carry further. He wasn't able to achieve the goals he had been looking for. And so, as far as he was concerned, it's like exactly what we call, like today, the president of the United States, when his term is over, he's a lame duck. He's finished. And he felt that about himself. He felt that lameness. That lameness caused him to not want to act as a sovereign. That lameness caused him to not want to apply himself to the problems that were at hand. And he receded, and he pushed away, and he secluded himself. And he wasn't interested anymore in being the king, even though there was nothing else possible, or there was no one else in sight that could possibly do his job. And the way the Chassidus understands this is because the king has to be surrounded. At first it sounds like self-defeating. He has to be surrounded by people that show him and tell him that his work is not only successful, but it's also appreciated. This sounds almost counterintuitive to us, because we'd think that a king is someone who feels all the time that he himself has the strength to do everything that's needed. He doesn't need anyone else's recognition. He doesn't need anyone else's praise. He can do it all by himself. But it doesn't work that way. A king is only as good as the atmosphere around him, meaning he has many abilities inside, but to come out, to bring them out, to bring out his potential, he has to feel that his actions are having an impact. He has to see that impact, and therefore he has to be surrounded by people who show him, who tell him, who discuss this with him, that his actions, that his kingship, his rule, is having a positive impact on the people. The same is true, says Chassidus, by God. God also, even though he created the world and he's the master of the world, and he doesn't need any recognition and he doesn't need any praise and we can't give him anything, yet we're learning from the temple that the temple has to be populated by people who are complete. It's like coming and saying, we know, God, that the situation is not the same everywhere else. But for you to want to be king, we need to populate the temple with people that show that the way that the world was created is actually good. And there are people here who are perfect in a certain sense. They demonstrate the potential, the possible potential of what creation can come to. And so if there's someone who doesn't reveal that potential, who is lame or has some other handicap, it's like saying, God, your workings are incomplete, and the world is not a good place. And therefore, why would you even want to be king? Why would you even want to continue to be the sovereign of the world? We do the same thing, by the way, on Rosh Hashanah. Jews have this special, interesting outlook that on Rosh Hashanah, the first day of the year, the first day of the new year, we have to, in a sense, coronate God. Now, why do we coronate him? Because if he didn't feel that there was someone who wanted him, he wouldn't continue to be God. Again, there's a side to God which doesn't need all of this. But Chassidus sees things as reflective of the human condition. That even our worship of God at a certain level contains a reflection of what a human king would be like, of what a regular king, a flesh and blood king would be like. And from there we learn how to act. And so one of the sources of this is this interesting law that we have in today's reading, that a person who has a handicap cannot be a priest in the temple. So I hope this is at least some food for thought to think about this. It's not an easy topic to process, to understand. It requires a lot of psychological insight into ourselves and frankness with ourselves and an honesty about how human affairs are conducted. And then to see that at some level God is reflecting that for us, showing us that that is the right way to conduct our own affairs, because it is, as it were, the way that he conducts his. Thank you very much. Hope to see you tomorrow.